Have you ever felt?
Are you listening? Damn.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Race to 100. I am Rick Thorsell.
And I'm Neil Boutin.
And we are on episode number 58.
Episode number 58. Rick, so what are we going to talk about today?
So we've got a part 2 from our conversation yesterday with the PEW Research Center.
Okay.
Yesterday we talked about white perspectives on race, and today we're going to be talking about black perspectives on race.
Black perspectives on race.
As it comes down to the numbers provided to us by the wonderful PEW polling organization.
And you can find this article that Rick and I researched at pewsocialtrends.org. It's pretty informative stuff.
So one of the most interesting things was black people's perspective on whether or not this country will be able to solve racial inequality.
And unfortunately, 50% of the African Americans in our country believe that we'll never solve the issue.
It's about 50. It's 43%.
Okay.
That believe that this country is incapable of being able to solve. You have an equal amount of people who say that black people who say that the country will be able to. So it's split 50-50.
Okay.
But that's a huge divide compared to, you look at the white community where it only says 11% of people end up saying that the country won't be able to make the changes necessary.
Okay.
Which is this huge divide. Now, what was interesting in following this up, well, why do black people have this perspective, this fatalistic perspective of what the country is capable of doing when it comes to race?
Because of the financial disparity between both races.
There's the plain economic numbers. As you
Yeah.
can see right now, the economic divides in this particular slide show that over time, the racial gap in household pay has actually increased to its highest ever. It's phenomenal. Seeing that just in the plain numbers, despite the progress that we may think we're doing on social fronts, when it comes down to the raw numbers, the raw economics of it, black families are exponentially disadvantaged on the economics.
So basically, given all the progress, as Rick's mentioned, that we've made in this country, social progress, racial progress, we've got affirmative action happening for black folks so they can achieve economic progress.
One has to ask themselves, is affirmative action enough if you still have these huge economic divides?
Exactly.
And I think that this brings out part of the reason why there's such a pessimism when it comes to possibilities of fixing a broken racial system. And then you have the added components of what the black community feels when it comes to how white people treat them. Racial discrimination, blacks are twice as likely as whites to believe that there has been racial discrimination against them, which has contributed to the fact that they're not making as much money. And we talked about this too, sort of, and the article doesn't really talk about this, but it's one of those common things where black parents have the talk with their children about how to interact with police.
Yes.
At a very early age.
Yes.
That's something that white families do.
Yes. When you're getting your driver's license, your parents sit you down and say, okay, if you are ever pulled over, here is how you comply with the authorities when this happens.
Added to that is white blindness, as you see in this next slide, where only 10% of white people feel as though they had that people were acted as though they were suspicious of them. Mm-hmm. Whereas nearly 50% of blacks have felt that at some point in time. The same in regards to acted if you weren't smart. Nearly 50% of blacks feel as though they were treated as though they weren't smart. Whereas only 9% of white people felt that. So white people don't even have that sort of self-consciousness about the racial disparities in this country, because that's not something that they personally are experiencing, the black community.
41% of blacks, 34% of whites have said that talking about race is an effective way for achieving racial equality in this country. And that point right there was very powerful to us, because that's the entire reason why we are doing Race to 100. Talking about racial issues in this country will bring empathy, and by being empathetic, we're one step closer to solving the problem.
And I think that brings up sort of the last interesting point that we ended up picking out of this article, which was the idea of having conversations about race, which is the whole point of Race to 100.
Yeah.
Is this ongoing conversation about a white guy and a black guy having an open and honest conversation about our experiences and the world that we see and the lens in which we see that through, and being able to try and better empathize with an experience that neither of us will ever be able to fully understand between one another. So this little component of bringing people of different racial backgrounds together to talk about race, only about a third of white people think that is an important and effective way to go about solving our racial problems. You have a slightly higher percent, 41%, so nearing half of blacks believe that bringing people together to talk about race is important too. And I think that number will grow with the age demographics, as we've seen that progress what we talked about yesterday when it came to the age ranges and how younger people are more likely to want to have these conversations and simply be aware about this. So I think that as this generation matures, that number is going to grow.
I do believe that it's inevitable that we reach racial equality in this country. Maybe it's just me being young. The older black folk might say I'm being naive.
No, I think that a large part, as we see,
if we do keep having these conversations with each other, and if people tune into our show and really open up their minds and try to learn something about what's happening really in this country, we can achieve that. It'll be a long time before that happens, but we'll get there eventually.
Yeah, and just to acknowledge too that we do live in very different worlds, regardless of how many conversations we may have, and that knowing that we don't know a lot can go a long way in starting to fix some of these bigger problems.
Cool. So feel free to like, comment, or subscribe to our YouTube channel for more quality episodes of Race to 100. We appreciate all of the support we've been receiving from our viewers, subscribers, the people who tune into us all over the world. None of this would be possible without you guys. We appreciate your support. Rich, is there anything else you would like to add?
Special thanks to my dad for bringing this article, Steve Thorsell, to my attention. And
it's not a special, it's a shout out.
Okay, fine. Shout out to Steve Thorsell.
Shout out to Mr. Thorsell, Steve. We appreciate the put on with the article.
And we will catch you next time on the Race to 100.